Everyone, thank you so much for such a warm intro. Today we will be talking about the scaling and about the role of investors in this process. I think that many of the presentees have heard about such a phrase, smart money. But not that many people, in fact, understand what smart money is, what it means. Besides maybe that the investors are writing the check, can have certain intros in LinkedIn, but the role of the investor, in fact, can be much bigger than this. And what could be the role of the investor? Let us delve deeper into that together with Andriy and Pete. For the beginning, I would like to offer Andriy and Pete to quickly introduce their funds and to tell about the investment strategy of theirs and about your involvement after the investments. Let us start with Andriy. Thank you. My name is Andriy Dovzhenko. I'm the representative of the foundation SMRK, the venture fund early stage. We are investing into Ukrainian startups which want to upscale for the global markets, and they have the objective to achieve the sales at the US markets, EU markets. At the majority of our startups, those are technical startups from different spheres, hardware, AI, and others, deep tech ones. Out of the famous projects of ours, we have Ajax Systems, Computera, Devos Robotics, Esper Unix, and others.
Pete, could you please share a few words about Endeavor Catalyst and your investment focus?
Sure. And sorry, I'm on video and not. I wish I was there in person with all of you. Hopefully next time and soon. I was in Kyiv a couple of months ago and really enjoyed my time there. So yeah, a little bit about myself and Endeavor. I've been with the organization for 10 years. So Endeavor is a global nonprofit organization supporting high-impact founders who work across industries, and we do that in 45 emerging markets and emerging ecosystems all around the world. So it's at our core, we are a support network for those founders. Within this large global organization, we have a rules-based venture capital fund called Endeavor Catalyst, which can invest into companies who are members of the network, who have been selected into the network. We very specifically focus on the scale-up stage of companies. We have a very rigorous selection process to select the best ones. Once companies have been selected into the network, if they raise a new venture capital round of $5 million or more, we can come in as a follow-on investor for up to 10% of the funding round, up to $2 million. So this is by doing this, we invest into a few dozen of our network companies every year, and now today we're investing out of our fourth fund. We've made 370 investments across 35 different countries, and 63 companies have grown up to become unicorns today. And we recently launched an Endeavor office in Ukraine, and so we've started selecting some really excellent founders there, and we'll soon announce some investments into Ukrainian companies as well. So hopefully that's a helpful introduction.
That's very helpful, Pete. As you
can see, our investors are mostly working with the companies which have roots from Ukraine or in the countries which are developing countries, and still they're targeting global markets. For the investor, it's always important to define how successful the startup will be during the scaling process at the international market. But rather frequently, it is not enough to have information for that, or the information is not substantial. potential. Maybe the company hasn't grown enough, or those are still its first steps at the international markets. So, Andriy, I would like to ask you about one of the stories from the portfolio of SMRK, that is the company of Competera, which started with working in our region, but gradually it's been transformed for the company which is more working at the US market. Andriy, could you tell, how did you believe in Competera? And what were the signals which you used to define its perspectives? Thank you for the question. I would really like to answer it in the following way, that I was understanding that since the first side, because this is the company which would achieve huge success. Unfortunately, it's not right, because venture investors are always working under the conditions of uncertainty and lack of information. That is why we are using such an approach that if the market which we spend lots of efforts upon and the product which the company is selling is rather nice, and the team which will deal with all of that is rather professional, then those are the conditions which give the opportunity to hope that the constellations of the stars will help us, that maybe during the next round everything will be okay. Of course, I understand why you laughed at my phrase. In fact, it is the working strategy, because if you eliminate all of the risks from your strategy, you are just increasing the probability that the positive options will be working. That is why, in case of Competera, they had a very nice product, which we understood will be in high demand in different geographical markets. They used to have a team which understood the product and knew a lot about the industry where they were working at. They had certain experience, and the market where they were targeted was rather big, because they were going to work with retail, and retail in the EU and in the US by the volume of sales is huge. Huge markets and companies like Walmart in the US or Auchan in Europe. They are famous even in Ukraine. So, since the first days of the work with the company, we said that we need to go to the US markets and EU markets. But thanks to the influence of the investor, who you can see on the stage, we convinced the company, first of all, to try the market of the Southern East Asia. The logic was the same. There are lots of people there, a huge retail sector. Buying products is the everyday need. The GDP of the countries is increasing, the average salaries are increasing, the retail market is increasing. Why not try these markets? We already had connections with Singapore, as we used to have one project there, which was more or less successful already. So we offered the team, first of all, and Singapore is the door to the market of Southeast Asia. So we offered the team, we were insisting, offering the team to try their product at the market of Southeast Asia. There was everything for it, a cool product, a team, they had a cool market of huge volume, both in money and in units, in customers, I mean. And the founders went there and worked in Singapore so that they could launch their business there. They managed to find several customers who even paid some money to them. Maybe some of them are still paying to them, but as you understand, they failed. They failed because they overestimated how this market is attractive, how easy it is for the European company to come to this market. Because on the one hand, Southeast Asia tolerates companies from Europe. because so far it means quality. And you can create your strategy also in the advertisement strategy that it is the European brand, but to create connections with bigger companies and so that the whole sales cycle could be more or less cool, not to take 2, 3, or 4 years, you need to live somehow. You need to stay at the market to create connections and to speak the same language. I don't mean linguistic, like Vietnam or Philippines, but just to understand the worldview of these people. And what I totally missed from my focus. That is why this exit to the Southeastern Asian market postponed the exit to the US market for 2 years, because we put a big stake and we were made a mistake. The team was forced to start anew, to go to the European market. It was done easier because the culture of business is much more comprehensible for us. We have shorter transport shoulder. You can go to the meetings with the clients quicker. Moreover, it would be easier to have connections through the networking. So when the client came to, well, we had connections with Europe much quicker than with Southeastern Asia. But still, the main market for retail so far is the United States. So we already understood that without exiting to the US market, it would be impossible to create a bigger project which would deal with the products for retail. Andriy, that is a very interesting story, but I would like to pose a clarifying question. You said we were insisting, asking them. So could you tell how much are you interfering into the strategic decisions of your companies mostly? Well, we are not interfering that much into any decision-making processes, because we are using two approaches. The first one, we are working with the professionals, and mostly the teams understand better than we do the market where they are working at. Even younger people, they are not, or they don't always have life experience, but they have work experience at certain market, which can be higher than ours, the investors' experience. And the second approach of ours, which we use, is the approach, I'm not a tutor, I'm a mentor. Which means I don't try to teach. I'm just telling you how to do life, not in school. So in case of Computera, we violated both principles, so that was the failing result, a failure, which we consider to be a cool experience. So now we preach the strategic approach, consulting one. The team is coming to us and tells us, we have two options, to the right or to the left. We already tried all of the rest options, and there are only two options left. Help us choose. Because sometimes it is hard to do. Even psychologically or mentally, it is hard because the founder or the team of founders have a huge responsibility and they would like to share it with someone. And the closer person is your investor. So that's it.
Pete, now question to you. So I hope you heard what Andriy just said about their experience with Computera and how it didn't work for the first time when they launched the international expansion. So I was wondering, given your experience at Endeavor Catalyst, where you work with founders from more than 40 countries, as you said, did you have such cases when the international expansion didn't quite work out?
Yes, I think numerous cases when international expansion doesn't work out. You could probably pick, there's probably a long list to choose from. I think oftentimes, for our founders, it's trying, I think oftentimes what it comes down to is maybe trying to do too much at once, or, trying to expand into too many markets at one time without having real, true product market fit, or or potentially expanding internationally in order to achieve product market fit, rather than doing it as a true expansion of something that works. It's kind of in search of that and then trying to do too much at once. And essentially it comes down to expanding too quickly. So I think there's a lesson in there. I think, one of the, maybe just to share from my own experience, because my previous role with Endeavor was actually doing international expansion. So it was setting up new country offices for Endeavor. So I was actually involved in the setup of Endeavor Ukraine, and actually had quite a bit of help from you, Hannah, which I'm grateful for. But maybe one lesson from there, just from my own experience of doing expansion work, was so this came down at one point Endeavor. So I mentioned that we're focused on emerging ecosystems, kind of broadly defined, right? So ecosystem, entrepreneurial ecosystems where we think the Endeavor network can really be value add, can really make an impact and make a difference. There was a time about 5 years ago where we looked at expanding into Germany. This is right around 2019. And I probably made 5 or 6 trips there, spoke to a lot of different leaders in the ecosystem, investors and entrepreneurs. And you heard from quite a number of people, quite a number of folks that they would love to have Endeavor there. And we basically got the office half launched, and then COVID hit, and put a real pause on all of our efforts. But the lesson, the thing that I was coming across is there was, a number of people that I've encountered say, yes, it would be great to have Endeavor here. You're more than welcome. I'll even join your board. I'll donate to the founding, etc. And many of that was a number of founders, etc. So it feels like we were listening. We were talking to the right people. It was the right audience, and we were getting a good response, and we were building traction, slowly but surely. But then there was a question, that our founder and CEO put to me, which was, for Endeavor this it would have been the most developed market for us to enter. And the question she said to me is, when we work in Germany, we're going to be additive to every entrepreneur. I mean, we're going to add some value. That's not a question. But are we going to be transformative to the ecosystem? And to me, that was I think oftentimes the best questions, or really good questions, are filters, right, for us. And by asking that question, it can really help us to filter decisions and help us to make a yes, no. And for me, that really clarified that that it was not the right market at that time, because we would have been additive to founders, but our mission is to be transformative to ecosystems. And I don't think we truly would have been transformative to the German ecosystem based on how advanced it was and how much momentum it had at the time. So maybe just a small lesson. Hopefully there's something in there for other folks who work in this market, but I do think, it's helpful to come up with really good filtering questions when you're doing expansion work, and that can help clarify where you go.
Yes, absolutely. Well, I think that given that you launched in Ukraine post-invasion, you came to conclusion that Endeavor Network would be truly transformative for our market, and I'm very happy to see you here, and hopefully to see more Ukrainian entrepreneurs joining Endeavor Network in the coming months even. So, what actually motivated you to launch in Ukraine in such time?
Yeah, I think so. A number of things, a long list. As I was quite involved in the launch from the beginning, and even a number of years ago. I think there are the things that many folks will say and recognize, which. There's the incredible tech talent of the, Ukraine and the region. There's the resiliency of all Ukrainians, but of founders in particular, and that's a trait shared by many founders in emerging markets. I would add to that, though, and I think that's an incomplete answer or descriptor. I don't think many people realize how many great consumer businesses, consumer-facing technology companies have come from Ukraine. I also don't think many people realize how many just the size of the ecosystem when you consider the diaspora and folks who move back and forth from, are maybe based elsewhere and visit Ukraine often, and companies who may be technically headquartered in London or San Francisco, but the vast majority of their employees are in Ukraine. I don't think investors or many people out there really understand the number of true scale-up companies that are out there doing this. And so I think it's once we understood the legacy and the track record of Ukrainian founders, companies like Grammarly, the Ukrainian founders at companies like PayPal, etc. Once we understood that, and then we didn't enter until I wish we had launched the office in 2020 or 2022, or we didn't do it until last year. It took us some time to do it. But I think what you saw, despite this latest invasion, that Ukrainian founders and Ukrainian companies there was no slowing down. They were only growing and accelerating. And I think that, to me, kind of pushed us like, listen, these founders are not slowing their efforts whatsoever. They're accelerating. So we as an organization, this is the most true to mission thing that we can do, is to step up now and to enter this market and to support those companies and help them scale globally.
Thank you, Pete. Андрій, хотіла у тебе запитати, як у людини, яка допомагала своїм компаніям.
As an individual who was supporting your companies during the war, the challenges that you face now, and especially at the beginning of 2022, these are unprecedented, and the role of investor could be much more critical than the funds that operate in more stable states and countries. Can you bring any of your experience of investor, of managing portfolios during the war? Well, I wish I would like to bring some nice and great cases, how successful we were in supporting projects, but I can't, because for the first months of invasion, we and partners were staying in Kiev, and we were helping our boys and girls, the defenders. We were not really planning how are we going to support projects. One of the cases, probably then close to Ajax office, there was a big barricade being constructed, and Alexander Kanatovsky said, Andriy, can you do a magic to move this barricade, because if Russians would strike on this barricade, maybe we will have issues with our factory, and there are such a strong people manning this barricade, so we hardly can do anything. But being serious, we were saying that we tend to calm people down, to keep their mood positive, helping them to deal with more focused issues. One of the Asper colleagues, he found it himself in the occupied area taken over by Russians, and also was seeking for support to be withdrawn, and we tried to find out where he was located. It ended positively, but the only things that we can do is just to, help him and advising him to change his location, because if assault is going to happen, he is co-located or close to a Russian HQ. There was a similar things with other projects. When we realized in June that situation had changed and we can continue investments, and as any investor, startup is looking for money from investors, and we start asking teams what sort of funding, what sort of investments they're looking for. But the majority of our projects, someone completed their operations, we can't run the business in given circumstances and conditions. The other projects appeared to be quite resilient and managed to continue during the full-scale invasion. That's another evidence. If you do not interfere into smart people businesses, those businesses will succeed. They don't need any external interference or support in brackets. So that's probably the case
Endeavor Catalyst doesn't lead rounds, but having you on the cap table usually has a lot of impact. Could you please comment on what you bring to the table?
Sure. Yeah. So as I mentioned, we as Catalyst do not lead rounds. We are purely a follow-on co-investor. However, and so that means we also, as part of our model, we don't take board seats as part of companies, but we always make sure that the lead investor of the round is taking a board seat. So we ensure that there is proper governance when we invest, but we ourselves do not do that. The reason that we do not take board seats is because we want to maintain our position as a support as a neutral unbiased kind of support network to these founders, right? And so now we do partner. We know there are many great VCs out there, including those in the room. But we're very intentional in maintaining our what we are as just a neutral network, a trust-based network for our founders, for them to turn to both in good times and when things are challenging. When it comes to kind of the support that founders receive, we talk about our support, which every entrepreneur who has been selected into this global network, they all receive access to this very high-powered network. It's includes folks like the COO of Facebook, of Meta, sits on our board. Reid Hoffman sits on our board. In every country where we operate, we have really top founders and executives who sit on our board. Hanna, I know, is an observer there. So that's part of the support, is this really incredible network. And we also talk about our support as access to talent and expertise, which a lot of that is done through mentorship and executive ed programs at Harvard and Stanford, things like this. Access to new markets, helping our founders to expand and do business globally. And then finally, access to capital and helping our founders, if and when they'd like, to raise a Series A, Series B, and beyond. And we also kind of bucket our Catalyst Fund as part of that support. So it's really those three things: access to talent, access to new markets, and access to capital is how we support our founders with this network.
Pete, can you refer an example of a company that really benefited from the access to Endeavor Network and scaled globally after joining it?
Scaled globally after joining. Good question. I'll try to pick one. Yes. So there's a company fairly nearby, which is a business called Insider out of Turkey. They are a marketing software business, now leveraging a lot of AI as part of their product offering to enterprises. They started probably about 10 years ago or so. There are 5 co-founders. Hande is actually a woman co-founder of the company, which is awesome, and a technical founder. And that's a business that they expanded. And that founding team, this is one of the things that they did, is they really leveraged their founding team to open offices and expand their presence around the world. And they, part of their actually expansion strategy was every market that they entered, one of their very first meetings was sitting down with the head of the local Endeavor office, basically to kind of walk through kind of their customer profile in terms of enterprises, get recommendations and get connections from the local Endeavor chapter. Now they have reached quite a scale today. General Atlantic just invested about $500 million into their business last December, and they were valued at about $2.5 billion at that point. So they've scaled quite well. They've done it from a true emerging market, Turkey, but now they're really a global success story. So that's probably one I would call out.
Fantastic story. Як бачите, дійсно роль інвестора може звестися як до простого підписання чеку на інвестицію, так і до чогось набагато
ended up with some investment check, but also that could be something much more bigger, contributing to the market expansion strategy, helping engage in external capitals. And on my behalf and Ryzen, we interact a lot with our partner companies, focusing at transforming their operational activities and hiring the management team members, which is quite often the precondition of successful upscaling internationally. And keeping in mind that our discussion is about to be completed, following the tradition, I would ask our investors to give an advice to those founders, co-founders who are thinking or already initiated their international upscaling, how they can interact and cooperate with their current future investors to make that upscaling the most effective and efficient. I will respond. Let's say, follow the advice, listen to advice, but keep in mind that we are all human. We could be wrong. No one is immune from mistakes. So rely upon your rational thinking and make decisions that you believe are absolutely suitable. But again, following the talks to investors, maybe investors could be of use for you. You know your company, you know your niche, you have your specific knowledge and experience. However, investors may be of use because there is a different space, different layer of knowledge, and in a perfect world, that could be a merge and a combination of both. Thank you, Andriy.
No, any final advice? Oh man, I would say if you've highly encourage folks to continue starting companies. I do think that despite all the challenges of building a business and all of the reasons to not build to not start a company, which speaking all full disclosure, I haven't started a business myself. I've just supported them for many years. So I'm always an admirer of those that do. But I do believe that in this day and age, with AI, with the tools that are available, with the ability to scale globally, to communicate globally, that now is truly an exciting time to build companies. And you actually have, I think many folks would have an advantage of those who may have started a business, 3, 4, 5 years ago, just because of the ability to build a tech stack from the ground up with AI at the heart of it. I think is incredible. So I'd say go for it and do it. Endeavor is here to help. We're very proud to support some awesome companies, Headway, FinTech Farm, who else? Jubal, Ajax, which has been mentioned, SolidGate. These are all Endeavor companies that have joined the network. We've got a fantastic board of directors. We have a really amazing team led by Sviat. So if you guys have a question, please do reach out. Our team is there to support you. That would be my last piece of advice. Is we're here to help.
Дуже дякую. На цьому будемо завершити. Я сподіваюся, роль інвестора в масштабуванні стала трошки ясніше. Можна отримати як хороші поради.
You may receive good advices, you may receive dubious advices, but it is up for you to decide the ways how to develop and expand your business. But investors could be your resource, and not only financial. Thank you, Hanna. Thank you.